We're joined now by Dr. Lawrence Haddad. He is Executive Director of Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. I mentioned to our viewers earlier on that we're going to zero in on the youth. But before we do that, let's talk about the food business, so to speak. The private sector, a very important role in ensuring that we have sustainable, scalable, practical solutions. But how can we rope young people into this matrix?
Thank you. Great to be here. Good evening. Roping young people into this matrix is absolutely essential because they are future entrepreneurs, future leaders, future civic leaders, and actually future voters. So we need to get them really involved in this. I've seen lots of great initiatives. The initiatives I think that have a lot of promise are startups. A lot of young people want to get into startups. Agriculture is not seen typically as a very exciting profession, but the startup excitement around startups and developing startups that can produce affordable, nutritious food for people on low incomes, that's an exciting, purposeful nutrition challenge, but also an exciting business challenge.
And do we start then by teaching them, helping them understand what sustainable agriculture is? Because I'd imagine that if we are saying we're building systems for the future, we've got to take the future with us in designing of that plan.
Exactly, but they know more than us sometimes. I'm leading one of the action tracks on the UN Food System Summit, which will be happening next year, and one of my vice chairs is a 16-year-old American girl who is pioneering all kinds of vertical agriculture in her home state in the US. So, we need to, people that are not youth anymore need to learn and be humble from youth activists and youth leaders.
So as you're seeing in the background, we are beaming some of the visuals that you have been involved in, the projects that you're working. Let's start with the Bangladesh Money Pledge and Adolescents Agents of Change. What can you tell us about those projects?
Absolutely amazing project. We were approached, GAIN has an office in Bangladesh. We were approached by a nationwide youth movement that said, we're really worried because all the kids in our youth movement, when they leave school or have their 15-minute break from school, they're going out to street vendors just outside their schools, and they're buying essentially really unhealthy food, very high in sugar, salt, and saturated and trans fats, which are very bad for you. What can we do? So rather than us providing the solutions, we worked with the SKNF youth advocates and the adolescents in that movement, and we came up with something called the Pocket Money Pledge. So it turns out in Bangladesh, most youth, even if they're from very poor backgrounds, have maybe 5 cents a day to spend on food. So we said to the adolescents said to us, let's start a pledge drive. Let's get 1 million adolescents in Bangladesh to sign this Pocket Money Pledge. And the pledge is, if you provide affordable, nutritious snacks for me to eat, government and business, we will eat them. And so I think we're up to about 800,000 signatures right now. And, this is going to be so powerful when we go to the government and say, look at what your adolescents are demanding from you. Are your government policies lined up to provide nutritious food? And then they will go to businesses and say, look, businesses, look at this latent demand out there from adolescents for nutritious food. If you provide more nutritious food, we will allow you to have the stamp of our movement on your products and on your vending outlets. So, adolescents individually as well as collectively can be very powerful change agents.
We were just showing visuals there of the reducing post-harvest loss in Nigeria, the tomatoes case. Expand a little bit on that, please, Dr. Haddad.
Yeah, the tomato work it's really interesting. It's a very low-tech technology to reduce tomato wastage. Tomatoes are one of the most, as all your listeners and viewers will know, it's one of the most perishable, fragile fruits or vegetables out there. And in Nigeria, 40% losses were being experienced in just a short trip of about 50 to 100 kilometers. And that's because the containers that the tomatoes were shipped in were allowing pests, were allowing tomatoes to fall out, were allowing them to be bumped around. And so we just worked with a local manufacturer to produce reusable plastic crates that can be used over and over and over again. And this very simple technology has reduced loss from 40% loss to 20% loss. So that's a huge issue. And in many communities, there are these food waste campaigns that are actually being driven by youth to say if there's excess food in a shop or a supermarket or a restaurant or a fast food outlet, the youth will pick that up, find a place to store it, and then network with other families that are destitute or hungry to come and get that food. So youth are playing such an important role in adding a sort of circularity to the food system that comes naturally to them, but not necessarily to the rest of us.
And how do we make food a collaborative effort? How do we make it exciting? I mean, it seems something that we take for granted as the UN Secretary General, that hunger's an affront in a world of plenty. So how do you make it that it also is not something that takes away someone's dignity when you are working on being part of that solution?
Yeah, you have to be very careful and very respectful, and you have to pay attention to people's right to food. That's a fundamental right, and we have to respect that, and that means treating everyone with dignity. But how do you make food everybody's business? I think, you have to get everyone involved. I live in the UK right now, and yesterday I signed a pledge that was initiated by the Manchester United footballer Marcus Rashford. And it was a pledge to force the government to provide free school lunches to kids year-round, and even when they're out of school. Now, I was raised on free school lunches when I was a kid growing up in London, and it's outrageous that the government is not doing that. But here you've got a 22-year-old footballer who's initiating a movement that I bet you it will change government policy. Maybe not next week, but in the coming months. So youth have an agency. They can connect to sports heroes, music heroes, YouTube heroes, YouTube influencers. They can reach parts of the ecosystem that the rest of us cannot.
Thank you so much for speaking to us and informing us. Really appreciate it, Dr. Lawrence Haddad, Executive Director of a Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition.